Hi everyone, Ryan here. Now, just giving you guys the heads up before this episode starts. In this episode, it's the first part of a two-part podcast where I'm sharing everything that you guys need to know to use OpenRent, which is completely free to find your next serviced accommodation property. I hope you get some value from this episode. I would love to hear your thoughts. The biggest question every entrepreneur, landlord, and guru wants to know is this. How are landlords and entrepreneurs like us increasing our rent up to £42,155 a year above the market rent from a single property? Now that replaces the average salary, whether we're the owner of the property or we're just the tenant. You're listening to Ryan OTTO, and this podcast will give you all the answers. Welcome to the perfect property deal. In this training, we will be covering OpenRent. I'm going to take you guys to OpenRent now. I'm going to search for properties in a particular city. I'm going to show you how to use the filters to find specific properties that will be perfect for the perfect property deal. So here on OpenRent, openrent.co.uk. We're going to type in Manchester. Okay, in a search bar on the left, we're going to type in Manchester and 3-kilometer radius. We're going to change the search criteria on the left-hand side down to £600 a month, all the way up to, let's go £1,500 a month. We'll click update and see what this returns. Okay. So now we're in Manchester. On the left, we've gone from shared. Nope, let's take that away. We're going to start at 1 beds and we'll leave it up to the maximum, 8 beds. Let's click search again. So 600 in the filter, up to £1,500 per month. We've gone from 1 beds all the way up to the max 8 beds. We'll click update. Right. Now we have a list of all of the private rented properties available in Manchester. Now, these are not agents. These are all on with landlords or owners direct. Agents are banned from using this site. So these are all no admin fees, no hidden costs. They're all for tenants to find landlords, okay? So if we look on the left-hand side, let's find something that's really suitable as a short let. Okay, this looks quite cool. Last updated around 4 days ago. 1-bed flat, Whitworth Street, Manchester. Let's see whereabouts it is on the map. Let's have a look inside. Looks modern. Looks like a new building. It looks clean and clinical. Has a balcony, which is great. Is that 2 bedrooms? Just a simple, modern 1-bedroom apartment. Okay, so let's have a look to see whereabouts it is on the map. So if we scroll down to the bottom, okay, here it is here. Good location, dead in the middle of Manchester, near the train stations. Here we go. Piccadilly there, Salford Quays here. Okay, brilliant. So this is ideal. So what we have now is a private landlord renting a 1-bedroom flat, which would be ideal for the perfect property deal. Let's have a look to see what else it has. 1-bedroom apartment on the first floor on the corner of Whitworth Street. Deansgate train station just across the road. The university is a 5 to 10 minute walk away. Local transport links and amenities offered fully furnished, which is great. You don't have to buy any furniture here. Entrance hall, balcony overlooking the canal, great. On-site concierge, fully furnished. Immaculate. You got the tram links minutes away. It's walking distance to universities. Okay? Brilliant. So what does this landlord want? £935 deposit. Okay. Only £100 more than the rent. Great. And £830 or £835 the rent in advance. It's available now for a minimum term of 6 months. We can see here where it is located on the map. Okay. So we know the landlord's name is William because it says it here on the right-hand side, William B. So what we would typically do is Click here on the right hand side, message landlord. Now in here, you can send a message directly to the landlord. You can just type the subject, please can I arrange a viewing? And you can type the message here to the landlord. So this is now your opportunity to contact the landlord. The goal here is to get the landlord's phone number so that you can talk to them on the phone or use the phone number later, which will explain why in a moment. Now, it's not a good idea to go right in offering your short letting pitch here, because it's very easy for them or the landlord to just not reply at all or just say no. That's why the first email should be very delicate and should read something along the lines of this, which is one approach which has very good conversions. If you remember and bear in mind, this is a two-stage approach. Stage 1 is to get the landlord's phone number, which we'll use and explain later why. Stage 2 is to float the idea of the company let, the corporate let, or letting to a company. Now what that means is they let to a company and the company can change the tenants in its simplest form. That's what you need with some other consents. Now stage 3, only use this when the landlord has declined. You'll get the contact number for the landlord so you can then contact the landlord as a third party or a separate entity now or once you have the landlord's phone number. Now stage 3 is the backup plan in case the landlord completely declines your offer. Okay? So, the message would read something along the lines of this. I would like to arrange a viewing as soon as possible. I'm ready to make a decision at the viewing if all is well, and I can also pay a holding deposit at the viewing too. I can supply everything you need to secure the property on the day. I'm also quite flexible to view over these days and times, so you would put in when you're available these days and these times. You'd ask the landlord what works best for you. You'd also ask, what's the full address for me to come along and view? You'll just sign off with your name and regards, something like that. So the landlord would now reply to whatever email address you have linked to your Open Rent account. Remember, when you contact the landlord for the first time on Open Rent, it asks you to set up a very simple account. Just put your name, your details, link it to an email, and that's how you communicate. Okay? So let's assume that's already in place. You send the first message to the landlord. The landlord will usually reply to that message and say something along the lines of, Dear your name, we can meet at the property on this date and this time. The address is, they'll give you the full address. Now you have the appointment confirmed. You also have the landlord's full address that you can use later. Now it's likely the landlord may ask you some additional questions here, and the goal is to answer them in a very careful, skillful way. So the landlord, it's what they want to hear. So when you get to view the property, it's at the property that you see what the landlord's thoughts are to letting to you as a corporate let or a company let. So you can have the condition or the clause or the pre-agreement that you can change your tenants at your discretion. Now what we found is if you can offer the landlords around 10% more than the market rent, this usually gets their interest, and this can even turn around a no to a maybe or even a no to a yes. Remember, using all the tools and the education that you're about to learn in this training, you can take a local AST market rent from £1,000 to £3,000 per month. So you can always have that huge margin to play around with, which means you can pay more than any other letting agency can, and you can pay more than any other local tenant can pay. So that's your trump card. All you need to do is decide how much you want to earn and make the landlord an offer they simply can't refuse. Does that make sense? So if the landlord declines to accept a company let, you have their phone number to follow up by phone. Now, the response from the landlord will usually be something along the lines of, "Dear your name, we can meet at the property on this date at this time. The address for the property is..." So now you have the appointment confirmed and the full address from the property. Now, the landlord is probably likely to ask you some additional questions here. Now, the goal is to get in front of the landlord at the viewing when you want to discuss or float the idea of the corporate let or the company let. So the goal here is for you to answer the questions in a particular way that the landlord wants to hear, so you don't say anything on this initial conversation to spook the landlord. You need to be in front of the landlord, or you need to have seen the property first before you can float the idea of the short let. It's when you're at the property, when you see what the landlord's thoughts are, that's when you can position your offer along the lines of knowing it's something the landlord would consider. So it's in this conversation with the landlord where they're asking questions, you must ask for the phone number. Now, you need the phone number for later on stage 3 of this approach, where if the landlord declines your offer, doesn't entertain the short let, you still have the phone number, you'll have the name, and you'll have the contact details, including the full address for the property and the landlord, so that you can send them another offer in a slightly different way that we'll get to after. So it's in these conversations with the landlord that you must ask for the phone number. You could say something along the lines of, "Can you give me the phone number? Because you haven't got Wi-Fi, so when you're out and about, you can't communicate by email." This could be that you're running late for the appointment. Could be that you're early. It could be that you get lost and you need to call the landlord, when you're on the way to the viewing. What we found is if you can offer the landlord more money, even after they've said no, they're more inclined to turn a no or a maybe to your offer into a yes. Remember, using the tools and education that you're learning here in this training, you can take the local AST market rent from, say, £1,000, and you're going to earn up to £3,000. So you always have that huge margin to play with. Now, this is great because it means that you can pay more or offer the landlord more than the advertised price by at least 10, 20, maybe even 30% to get your first few deals, which means you're 30% above what any letting agency could achieve, which means you're 30% above what any other tenant would pay. It's these methods that help the landlord go from a no to a yes, or from a maybe to a yes when they see your offer. Now, that's your trump card. All you really need to do is decide how much you want to earn and make the landlord a higher offer that they can't refuse. Now, this is all depending on how or when you float the idea of a corporate let or a short let or a company let, how the landlord reacts. If they react very badly and if it's a no, they're dead against it, maybe a higher offer will convince them or persuade them. If it's they're on the fence and they're not sure, they've tried it before, or they've had a few offers and they're considering it, then you don't have to go in so high above their advertised price. Now, you don't always have to pay above the advertised price, but this really does work just to close your first few deals, get the revenue coming in, and then you can alter and offer a lower amount, a lower rent. Now, in the past, we've been offering anything from 70% of the market rent. My friend, if you're not already using arbitrage, what I mean by that is taking a rental property you don't have to be the owner of out of the AST rental market and putting it on Booking.com. You stand to lose out on the largest transfer of wealth that's happening right now in 2019. Because every £1,000 of AST rent is now worth up to £3,000 of rent on Booking.com. If you're not focusing all of your attention on Booking.com right now, you stand to lose. Now, you have a massive advantage over the other 2.5 million landlords that are also looking for these secrets. Don't waste that advantage by doing nothing after listening to this talk today. You can join our communities on social media called Ask Ryan Otto to discuss these episodes and have your questions answered on the next show. You can find us on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, LinkedIn, and Snapchat. I would love to hear from you and know what you liked about this talk.